Okay, Loom. So what we're trying to do today is we're going to take the Loom Network. The Loom Network is a layer 2 solution. Layer 2 means we're not on the Ethereum mainnet. We're actually on what's known as a layer 2 network. So it's something that's complementary to the mainnet Ethereum network. And times you would use it are you don't want to maybe burden your application with a lot of the fees for gas. You want faster transactions. You don't require everything that's on the Ethereum network in terms of security and integrity. So you can go with a faster solution. So Loom is one of these options. They say in their words, they are the production-ready multi-chain interop platform for serious dApp developers. And there's some credence to that. So they have their network in production. They've been running for a while now. They have actual dApps with real volume. So that gives them quite a bit of credibility. And it's a good solution. So they are also multi-chain, so they're not using just Ethereum-based networks. They have Tron and EOS, or EOS and Cosmos coming soon, Binance Chain. So they have a few different options for you to integrate with. So I use them up to date to just act as Solidity or Ethereum-like sidechain for my applications. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use hooks, so React hooks. We have a useLoom hook that we're going to use. That's going to connect us into Loom and then allow us to get contract from there. And with that contract, we'll invoke that and we will add a value and get that value back. And as I've recommended in the past, this is an excellent article if you want to learn about useEffect hooks. It gives you a great overview. It takes a little bit to get your head around the idea of dependencies and actually building applications that are really reactive to changes in state. But once you do get your head around it, it's very, very powerful. Okay, so here's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to use this hook. I have a project up on my GitHub. You can grab this URL here, and we will use that to do a git clone. Okay, so one quick note. So I'm on Windows. So on Windows, if you're going to use Loom on Windows, it's suggested that you use this Windows subsystem for Linux. That's the recommended way of using Loom. I'd also suggest you go this way. There's other options with Docker and things like that, but this works pretty good. So you can enable this through your PowerShell, and then you just download the Linux distribution that you want. So I'm using Ubuntu. And then if you do that, you can follow along as is. If you're on Mac or if you're on Linux already, then you're good to go. Okay, so like I said, we'll grab this. We'll open that Ubuntu shell. Okay, and then we're going to go to a fresh directory. We will git clone, if I could spell, and we'll clone out the project. Okay, so in this project, we have, we have the project we just got from Git, and we have an example directory. So the example directory is super basic, bare bones, create React app. It's basically vanilla, and then I just added in the useLoom hook and a couple buttons so we can just try using this hook and connecting to Loom. So we're going to want to build this. So we'll go to example, and we'll do yarn install. I'll just pull that down here while it builds. Okay, so the other thing we're going to do is we're going to use the Loom Network guys have a truffle dApp chain example. So we will use a class that they've created in here as our base for getting this hook going. And we'll also use this project to deploy our contract since it's pretty much ready to go. So if you I'll let this one finish and then we'll grab this project as well. So one thing you need to do is you need to have Truffle installed, I think. So Truffle is a great set of tools working with Solidity and Ethereum to develop smart contracts, to test them, to deploy them. Highly recommended. And it's almost standard in the industry. There actually are some other options, some good options, but a lot of people are familiar with Truffle. So it's a good tool and it's a good place to start. So you can install Truffle. So Truffle, if you go to their NPM project, So you can grab it here. This is a regular install with npm into your packages. So there's a global install you can use. So you can do, instead of doing this command, you could do npm I truffle with the -g. So with the -g, that you'll get a global. So whenever you're anywhere in a shell, you'll be able to then call truffle. So I'd recommend you go that route. Okay, so this is done building now. So we'll see that we have the project here. Example. Okay, so that's good. So we can do a yarn start, and that will start our server. So while that's happening, let's get the other Git project that we need for today. So we need to open another Ubuntu window. So open over here. Okay, so here we're going to go to this useLoom demo. Okay, now let's clone this project. It's from the truffle project, or sorry, from the Loom network. Where are you guys? Here we go. Okay, so it's truffle dap chain example. So we're going to clone that. Okay, so we'll do the same thing, git clone, not with the G. Okay, so that's there. And we'll also build that. Okay, so our server's running now. So we'll do yarn install. Okay. Okay, then we'll open all this up in our editor. So I'm using VS Code. Use whatever you like. So let me just add that folder. So it's going to take a second probably. Okay, so just a quick note. So if you're using this Windows subsystem, let's see the best way to show you this. So it will be installed in your users, app data, local packages, canonical group, whatever, and then local state, and the root file system, and then home, and this is my user, and we install to this Loom demo, useLoom demo. Okay, so that will open our projects. So it's good to know if you need the files that you have in your Linux subsystem, if you're new to that. Okay, so quickly, so our basis of what we're doing is from the Loom guys, and they've developed this, where is it, contract.js. So essentially, this is the template for what we're going to do. So they're doing everything in one file, which makes sense for what they're doing this for this example application. But we're going to take this and we're going to break it up to a couple pieces. So the first piece will be, my mouse is not working. Let me just plug it in. Some technical difficulty here. Okay, there we go. So here, they are in this class, they're going to create a client. They're going to grab the address, which is fine. And then they're going to create a contract instance. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a connection with this client. And then we are going to separate creating the contract instance out so we can create other contracts. And we'll do some examples of that a little bit later on. So first thing we want to do is just make sure we can connect to the Loom network. Okay, so this is our basis. If we now go into the useLoom GitHub project we got and the example directory that we built over here and then we started. If we go to source, useLoom, we can see that first hook is the useLoom hook. So similar to what they did is we have this sort of connection object. So the way this works is when you call useLoom, I'll just show you that call. So in our app.js, so this is a super basic React app, we have this call to useLoom. So right now, if I open a browser window, you should see some errors. So right now you'll see errors. So it's trying to connect to Loom. That hook's trying to connect to Loom, but there's no Loom running. So in a real application, we'd have an error message and we would stop checking. But in this vanilla React app, all we're doing is showing that error to the console. So here, when we get this hook, so let's just go have a look at it. So when you calls, it's expecting a connection information object. If it doesn't get one, it's going to use this default connection. So this is kind of good practice. So the first time the user runs this, it's not going to break. But they are using a default connection that may or may not have wanted to do that. So we actually do a warning here somewhere. We say there's no connection information. So this is also good practice. Tell them you're using a default connection. And then once they get more used to this, they can then provide the connection information object, which we're going to do after. So now we have a useLoom object, has the information that properties that Loom expects to have on the object. And then from that, we use, like we showed you that contract class the Loom guys developed, we use that in a hook. So this hook is dependent on the connection information object. So when it gets this or changes, it's going to run this useEffect hook. And in this, we just create a client. So we're going to generate some keys after, you'll see this. But this part is using these keys then to, through the Loom provider and Web3, make a connection. So we're going to do that in a second, and then we'll just check block height to make sure that we get a connection. Okay, so before we can do that, we need to run a local instance of Loom. There's some options to do this. So you can do it manually. You can actually download the Loom binary. You can generate your keys. You can run it. And we're going to do that in another video. But in this video, we'll do the easiest route, which is actually to just follow their instructions here. So this is their testnet block explorer, which we're going to use in a second to make sure that we're getting the right block height. So we go to their project, the adaptation example. So we pulled this down, we installed truffle globally. We've installed this project, we did a yarn install. So next step is so this is for testnet, we're going to go to the local. So let's generate our keys. So we need some keys to interact with the network. Okay, let me just make sure I'm in the right folder. That's right. Okay, so let's run this command, yarn gen loom key. So that downloads a binary. And that's going to also generate us some keys. And you can probably see those keys. Here you'll see private key and public key. So it generated those keys, and you can move those around. We'll do that in another video. We'll move them around and we'll actually use those. And now we're going to follow the next step here. We're going to init Loom. So Loom needs a Genesis file. So let's init Loom so it has a Genesis file. So we run Loom init. And now if we go to the Loom directory here, so it's basically created a local instance of the Loom here. And now it also has a Genesis file, so it's ready to go. So we can just run Loom run. Let me see how they do it. I think they would do Loom, yeah, Loom run. So we run this command, Loom run. Our window. Here we go. So Loom run, and now we'll start blockchain. So now we have a local blockchain running. Let me just put that over here. We'll keep that going. And our block height is 7. So there's 8 blocks, 9 blocks, 10 blocks. Okay, so now we're going to try and connect to this. So let's refresh this and see if our useLoom hook will make a connection. And it does. So we don't see those errors anymore. So the way we can make sure we have a connection is we can just get block height. So we can ask the blockchain, what height are you at? So it's at 28. So we should get around 28. Okay, so we got the block height. So next thing to do is we know we can make a connection. So with our blockchain, we're going to want to do blockchain stuff. So we want to deploy a contract. We want to set a value on a contract, and we want to get a value on a contract. So let's go and do that. So if we just look at our contract we're going to deploy, we're going to use the dApp chain example here. Let's simple store. So this is just going to set a value, a numeric value, and then it's going to, well, they do this for their app, and then we're just going to get a value. So we'll set a numeric value and we'll get a numeric value back. Okay, so let's deploy that contract, this simple store contract. So to do that, we are going to go back to a truffle example. Okay, so we're going to need another window. So we got our blockchain running here. We got our super basic React app running here. So let's get another window that's going to let us deploy our contract. Okay. Loom demo, truffle example. Okay, so let's run. Actually, we'll use their method. Yarn deploy. So this will compile all the contracts, deploy all the contracts that they have into the blockchain, and then it will, with the built files, it will put it into their project source contracts directory, and we'll grab those. Okay, so we should see some transactions here when it's deploying contracts. Contract deployment is a transaction. But first we'll see a compile and then deploy. So there you can see compilation and some deployment. Okay, some more contracts. Okay, good. So we deployed our 4 contracts. We saw those come through. So now we're ready to use those. Okay, so let's bring a contract over. So we're going to want to bring over this contract. Simple start. So what's happening now is they are compiling it, deploying it, and then they're building it and putting it in this directory as a JSON file, which is essentially a compiled contract that they then load in their application with this contract.js. And we'll see that somewhere in the file. So here's the contract that they're using. So that is the contract we looked at. So here it is. They're importing it. So we're going to do something similar. We're just going to move this out of this contract class so that we can load multiple contracts with the same Loom connection. Okay, so let's copy over our contract that we just compiled. So it's right here. And we're going to want to bring it over to our source, run examples, source. Okay, we're going to need a contracts directory too. So let's create a contracts directory. Actually, I don't want to do it here. I'm going to do it in the window because there's permissions errors in Windows if you use the Linux subsystem and you create directories. So let's just do it here. Okay, so let's go to our project directory. So under the useLoom demo, useLoom. So we have our example application. It's a very simple React app. And let's create under source. Let's make a directory called contracts. Okay, so now we're going to want to copy over that contract. Okay, so we're going to copy, let me go find it. Source, right? Contracts. Okay, there it is. Okay, so what we're going to do is we want to move this simple stored JSON from here. We want to move it to use demo, use Loom, example, source, contracts. Let's see if that works. It's been a while since I've been in the terminal. Example, source, contracts. Okay, it's there. Okay, so we're going to be able to now use that and pull that in and invoke it. So we know it's deployed on that chain. We saw it get deployed there. Now in our app, we need to use it. Okay, so here in our super simple app, like we mentioned, we're getting a connection to our local blockchain. Actually, before we do this, let's just connect to the testnet while we're here. So the first thing we're going to do to do that is we're going to use configuration. So this is a very simple configuration approach. We have a .environment file here. So right now it's pointing to development. So we're not using this at all. So we need to switch the hook. So right now we're using this useLoom hook, right? Which will, and the advantage of this one is it'll take any configuration. If it doesn't get configuration, you'll use the default configuration, which is the local blockchain. So it'll work out of the box. But we're going to use a slightly more complicated one that will grab configuration for us. And the way this works is it goes, and if configuration is set to development, it uses the development configuration, which is the same. If it's set to xdev, which is Loom's testnet, it will then use these connection parameters that we have in a file. And then we use some constants just to make it a little bit easier to work with. So whenever you grab things from .environment files, so this is our .environment file, there's a chance that it could be undefined. So if you make an intermediary file that you use, so this, when you call this, can be undefined. If you make it a constant, then that problem kind of goes away for your code, although it technically still could be undefined, but it is a bit easier to work with if it's predictable what you're going to get out of these files. And you can deal with errors another way. So here, our useLoom with config hook will go grab configuration from that external file, and then it will call useLoom with that connection information. So we're calling the same hook, but this time we're providing connection information. And if you want to use your own networks, you just have to add those in. Or if you want to connect to production, you just have to have an entry for production, and you would just change this to that. So let's connect to, because we know we can connect to our local, right? So we're getting block height from our local. We're all the way at 593, right? 598. And if we were then to go and connect to the testnet xdev, we should see, let's see here. Okay, so let's shut down the server. So in order for this to take effect, one negative of this, or one trade-off, is that you have to restart your server. So we're going to switch this from development to test. I did that backwards. Okay, so now we're going to use a test network. It's going to pick up this configuration. So when the useLoom with config hook runs, let's make sure we're using that hook. Yep. It's going to then go to the configuration, pick it up, and then we'll be connected to the testnet. So let's start our server. It took 1 second or so. So even now, if we stop the server, which we could do, and then we say, let's get block height. Oh, I need to refresh. So now it's connected to the testnet. And if we get block height, it's 9.6 million. If we go to our, we'll see our total blocks is 9.6 million. So it's going to the testnet, and then it's asking xdev, the testnet, what's your block height? So let's restart this. So now we're going to deploy a contract here. Let's Loom run. Okay. We'll go back to using our development instance. So we can stay with the configuration. So we'll go to here. Let's uncomment this or recomment this one. So now we're using the development configuration. Need to restart a server. Okay, and then we'll load that contract we deployed, and we'll invoke it once this is running again. Okay, so it's running. So let's just make sure we're connected to local. Okay, yeah, so we're at 706. So it's a local block height over here. Okay, so now we're going to call this to set a value on that contract that we deployed. Okay, so we're going to have to load this contract. So I have a commented out import statement for you, so you can just load that. And then we have some code here. I'll explain that to help you work with this. So we are loading the simple store contract, the JSON file, which was compiled by Truffle. We copied over. That then gets pulled in here. So we are creating a contract instance. So this method, Loom Action, so this is one of our files in this that we pulled down from the GitHub, our GitHub, which was Loom Actions. It allows you to create a contract instance. It has its own helper then to get the network for Loom. So it will go get the current network, try and pull in that contract and load it for you, and then return that contract instance back. So here we say, give me the contract, I'll give you Loom object, and I'll give you the contract I want. You'll give it back to us, and we're going to set a value on it. So if you're new to Solidity, the people who developed the Loom network also have a great course called Crypto Zombies, and a lot of the course elements are free, and it's really good. So you can go and I can show you quickly. You can go and you can write smart contracts here. They have a little editor in their browser that you can then actually try stuff out. So you can check answer, and it will tell you what you did wrong, which is great. And it's a great way to learn. And they follow a lot of the best practices too. They use the Open Zeppelin contracts for the basis for the contracts. So it's really good. So if you're learning Solidity, this is a great refresher or a great way to learn. Okay, so back here, so we're going to grab a value. We grab our contract. We're going to set a value on the contract. Then this is going to create another contract instance, so separate contract instance. We just did this so that you can see that we can create more than one contract instance. So we could have 10 contracts deployed, and we could grab all of them and work with all of them. And then we're going to get that value we set here. So we should get back 901. So let's just change this to something else. I'll set this value, and then here we'll grab the value and we'll display it to ourselves. Okay, so let's do that. So we'll refresh. Make sure to connect to local. Yeah, it should be good. So we set that value. Okay, we should see a transaction somewhere here. Not see it, but let's get to get. Okay, that didn't work. Let me just see why. See this file. There. Okay, let's see. That. Okay. Just restart just in case I missed something. Make sure my contract's here. Oh, I don't see the contract. Oh, here it is. Okay, contract's there. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, so actually there you can see we invoked the contract. I don't know why the restart was necessary. Actually, I know when you pull in the contract, for whatever reason, a restart seems to be necessary. Okay, so here's the value we set. So it should be hot reloading. React should hot reload this, but unfortunately it's not. So once you copy your contract over, just restart just to make sure that everything's okay. Okay, so let's do one more thing. Why don't we create, just in case you want to create your own smart contract and try that out, why don't we just create a really simple smart contract? We'll follow all the steps that we followed before. This will take a minute. So if you know how to do this already, you may want to just turn off the video now. One thing I would suggest is, so I'm doing a video series here on my YouTube channel, so you can just follow along, building blockchain applications in 2020. So that is a framework for you to actually develop. And there's it's under this CodeArt banner. So it's gonna be a real application that goes to production, so you can follow along. Loom is part of the mix, so we have a framework there that works a little bit differently. It's very state-based, but you can then use Loom as well in a production system and see how that all works with testnet and everything else. Okay, so let's go back to our app. We'll create our smart contract and we'll deploy that. Okay, so let's create our own smart contract. We'll do something super simple, just a string, but at least then you'll know how to create a smart contract, deploy it to Loom, and pick it up with the useLoom hook that we created. Okay, first step. Okay, so with this Linux Windows subsystem thing, there is an issue where if you're creating files in the IDE, you'll get a rights access error. There's no way to really fix it that I can find. So we'll just create a file quickly here that we'll use for smart contracts where we will touch simple string solidity. Okay, and that will make that file for us. And we'll make a migration file as well, the migrations directory. So we will, let me just do the format. So we will touch simple string JS. That's it. Okay, so let's move up to the top directory. And we will then go here and look at those files. Okay, so we have, can see them. Just restart my IDE. Okay, so there's our contract. So under the truffle dap chain example, under contracts, we just touched that contract file, which is empty. So, and we also touched a migration file, which is also empty. So let's fill those in. So we are going to create simple string. So we are going to do something a little bit different. So we were, last contract that we got from the Loom guys, we were setting and reading a number, a uint 256, and now we're going to use a string. Okay, so this is going to become a string, and we called it simple string. No events for now. That's easy to add. Okay, and it should be a string. Okay, so we need to tell solidity that it's an in-memory string, because you can also have a string that is stored. Okay, string memory public value. Okay, good. We're not going to use this. We're going to set it again. We will return a string memory. And value, and then we're done. Simple string. Okay. And now we need to fill in our migration. So we'll just copy and paste, because all great code starts with copy and paste. And okay, so the migration of the contract we used before, we are going to create a new migration. We named it number 3, because they go in order. And we're going to pull in our simple string contract. And we are going to deploy our simple string contract. Okay, so if all is good, if we run yarn deploy, and we will say reset, which says just redeploy everything, we should have 5 contracts deployed now instead of 4 like before. And then we'll go and grab that contract, pull it in. So let me just check the truffle config. Okay, why don't we try building somewhere else instead of source contracts? Let me just let it finish, make sure it deploys. There's our simple string contract that's deploying right now. You can see transactions over here. And we're good. So we have 5 deployments. So one thing we will change is right now for the dap chain example, it's going to their source contracts. So we are going to just put it in build, okay, to make it a little bit easier for us to grab. So we can just do this again. We actually can just do truffle build. But I mean, to be thorough. Just run it one more time. So in our build directory, we should now have that new contract file, which we're going to have to bring over to our project. Actually, it's possible just to have it build into our source project, our example project directory, or we can also have something that copies over. Okay, everything's deploying. Okay, so let's see if we got a good file built somewhere else. Go to build. Right, okay, so all our contracts are there now. Okay, so we can take our new contract. So simple string. Okay, so we're going to move simple string JSON, our new contract, to useLoom example source contracts, right? And let's also just copy over simple store. So whenever you build anything, can't spell, so copy it over. Okay, so now let's go back, make sure our contracts are there. And we are going to restart our server because we had an issue last time because it didn't pick up the files. So yarn start on our server. And where are we? Okay, we'll just make sure the files are there. Loom example source contracts. Okay, so we have two contracts now. Okay, so let's go and pull that in here. Okay, so in our useLoom example project, in our contracts directory, we have two contracts. We're going to pull in our second contract in app.js. So here we are going to say, bring in my next contract. Okay, so simple string. Okay, and then here, our button, let's just change it. We're going to change it to, let's set our string. Okay, so that is going to do almost the exact same thing. So we're going to get a contract instance from our Loom connection. We're going to use this simple string. And then we are going to set something, and we're going to set a string. We are going to set something. Okay, and then what we want to do is get from our string. Okay, so same thing. So we are going to, actually we could use the same contract instance, but to make it simple as possible, let's grab that. And we are going to call get our string. Okay, contract return string. Okay, so that should be good. You never know. Okay, so let's go check. So our buttons didn't change. I wonder if it's because I'm in the Linux subsystem that we're not getting hot reload. Let's see what happens. Get our string, set our string. Interesting. Okay. So we will check our block height. Yeah, so we have a connection to local. Let's see if this works. Okay, so we see our transaction went through here. And if all's good, we on our new contract, we get our string. So we deployed a new contract to Loom. We used our useLoom hook to connect to that contract, set a string, we got a string. So if you want to create your own contracts on Loom with this useLoom hook, you should be good to go.